Welcome to another episode of the SC Hub's NBL SuperCoach show. I'm Barnesy, your host for this week. We have had a couple of weeks off with the Christmas and New Year period, but I got Boz with me this week. Boz, welcome back, mate. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas. Hopefully, you just said that you had a 10-day break and you're just back and refreshed. Hopefully, you're watching some ball when you're away, though.
Yeah, Barnesy, first of all, Happy New Year to you too, and Merry Christmas and all those things. It feels like we've been away for a long time, but yes, 10 days away. To be honest, I watched a couple of games here and there, but it was a good time to kind of refresh, not only just personal life, but also away from the NBL. So yeah, got a few games in, but at the same time, really try to kind of get off Twitter, get off the socials, and just kind of focus on family rather than Supercoach. How'd you go over the New Year period?
Well, I didn't go anywhere, and I watched every game because I'm a maniac. So, but I had the family stuff and everything. So, I mean, I guess probably the same for a lot of NBL fans and also super coaches. Bit hard with between Christmas Day and even like the Boxing Day and then Christmas Eve and then the New Year's. There's a lot of games there that are tough to get onto live. So there's probably like 3 that I missed live that I sort of caught up on. And did the next day with some of the replays and stuff and whatever. So I've enjoyed it. One of the interesting things that was brought up on Discord, though, and I can't remember which of the guys brought it up, but a lot of us agreed, was I think that we all came into this period really excited with the whole 12 Days of Christmas NBL promo and everything and having basketball all the time. We didn't really think about how tough that was going to be for Supercoach because, like this episode in particular, it's going to be very apparent because we're going to talk about the previous round, but the previous round actually finishes tonight. And we have to talk about it still because the turnaround is, this round finishes tonight and then tomorrow it's the new round with another game, first game of the round for next round. So the turnarounds have been really hard, I think. And also it's been really long, hasn't it, for super coaches to wait to get their trades done.
Yeah, it feels like that. And it's a case of, the 12 days of Christmas, 12 games in a row. But if you actually break that down, when NBL's just over the weekend, you actually get more games in the short period of time. So for me, I actually like it when it's, 4 days in a week where there are games because most of those days there's doubles. I'm a bit of a freak. I like to sit back and watch 2 or 3 games in a row. So when that is on the schedule, it's great. I've actually found it hard, every night having to wait until like 7:30 at night, 8 o'clock at night, just to see the one game that's going to be on the day. But, you can't really complain. You can't be spoilt for choice. But yeah, for super coaches, those close turnarounds, they're tough. I succumbed to one of them. I for some reason got Wardenberg, our man, in, not really thinking.
I did the same.
He was kind of, and all of a sudden, all it takes is him to cramp up in the second quarter, and then that's one, kind of on-field player ruined for that week, and you've only just kind of started the round. So, tough predicament to be in, but a really fun, kind of challenging way to navigate the game of Supercoach. I like it when it's different.
Yeah, and I think a lot of casual super coaches missed out on opportunities because they didn't get their trades done quick enough. And even the ones that are more fanatical about it, like I know that I made mistakes because normally I would have some plans and I would do them after lockout. And then over the course of the next 3-4 days, I would revisit them constantly and look at other options. Whereas it was like whatever you did first up is what's going to happen because the round's already started now. And that actually killed me quite badly. So I made a couple of mistakes and I believe I would have caught them when I went back and looked again when I had more time, but it was just because the round turnarounds are so quick. And that's going to play havoc at the moment with the rankings and stuff. So I dropped from like 34 to 65-ish or something. It absolutely killed me. And it's looking tough for me now. So it's an interesting week. We are going to talk about last round, which is still the current round by 1 game, first of all, to start off. So for everyone that's tuning in, we're obviously not going to have the break-evens available yet because we're waiting for lockout tonight. And we're also not going to have all the scores because we've got a game tonight as well. But it is still a very interesting round to talk about. And when we're having a look at it, I think one of the big winners for this round was Jalen Adams. He scored 101 Supercoach points. He was the second most popular captain, but by a fairly long margin, Xavier Cooks was the number 1 guy. So if you brought him in and you captained him, you absolutely killed it with the 101 points. And at 406,000, he wasn't an easy trade in. I was very surprised, Boz, when I looked at the ownership. I had him already, but 8.5% of teams own him, puts him in pod territory. I thought after the trade-ins, I thought he would have been a lot higher owned. And it's kind of been a big advantage and one of the few advantages I managed to gain in this Christmas period, because I think that the time to get him in was before, because I think we could see this sort of coming. And now there's a lot more variables and a lot more options after the last round. So anyone who got Jalen Adams in this round, I think would be absolutely cheering with 101 points.
Yeah, 100%. They're laughing, those owners. And, you know, for someone like me who had him early days with all through the injuries, it's such a hard kind of mental game to get over those kind of things. But I think you just got to kind of back in the guys that show form. And that's probably something I've lacked this year is, you know, just thinking that someone else will do what they're doing, but not actually going for the guy that is doing it. So, for example, I mean, Casey Prather is someone who I've just avoided every week, but he's just killing me every week. So, someone like Jalen Adams, yeah, if you were kind of on that, seeing him play and seeing that, okay, now he actually is now the focal point of Sydney. I want to jump on him now. You'll be reaping the rewards. And to be honest, I think the reason why you might not be so highly owned is maybe because everyone's got KD, even though he's playing on his singles and he's still doing heaps, and everyone's probably got a Trey Cal and maybe a Keandre Cook. I think everyone kind of has just left their guards completely. They've left them. They've thought, I don't need to really do anything to this spot, so I'm actually going to go up to the forwards and see who I can kind of get in. And that's why I think we see Cooks this week being number one captain and probably the number one most brought in player, just because the forward spot's an area where people can still make those moves to jump the rankings. But yeah, for those that brought Adams in, you're licking your lips. Massive play.
And Adams had 101, but 3 of the top 4 scores were all guards. So that shows how difficult it was in the last week to get the guys in, because the guard spots are just so heavily coveted and there's so many options. Adams had 101. We had Trey Kell at 80 for number 2 player of the round. And at number 4, we had Derek Moulton Jr. at 71. Trey Kell's at 16.1%. He's still not as highly owned as what he should be. But the fact that the guard spots, there's so many options, that's why. And Walton Jr. I was actually very surprised about. He's at 9.2% ownership for this round that's passed. And it's mind-boggling to me because a couple of rounds ago, he was 200,000. He was one of the best downgrade cheapy buys of the round. And even after that, he was a really good buy and he showed form. So for him to come in with a 71 is great. I did not realize that he was that low owned. So 2 out of those top 4 are actually in pod territory in Adams and Walton. If you've got those guys at the moment, I think that you're in a real good spot. But it was a great round for them. Xavier Cook, 78 points, obviously was an easy captaincy choice. It was always going to be that second game for him that was going to be the better captaincy game. And he came through for that. Did you end up captaining Cooks, I'm going to guess?
Yeah, Barnesy, I did. Yeah, just played it safe. Lock Cooks in, didn't have Adams. Look, I thought about Cal because I really have liked him this year. He's kind of been my PJC of this year, where I've really liked watching Illawarra and watching Trey Cal ball. Either way, I've lost 4 points, so I didn't do it. But yeah, Cooks was the safe one. What about yourself?
Yeah, I mean Cooks as well. I toyed with Adams. That's another one too. I reckon if I had another 24 hours, I would have looked at it more and said, actually, Adams is really low owned. I'm going to go him. But I just didn't have the time to see it. So, it's interesting too. I'm just going to point out a couple other things for this round. We had 2 single game guys score in the top 8 players. And
I wonder who they are.
No surprises at all. Kendrick Davis with a 59 and Bryce Cotton with a 57. Now, you talk about potential mistakes. I'm going to let everyone in on a little secret of mine. I traded Davis out. But I don't feel too bad about it because my safety blanket was always I still own Bryce Cotton. So it sort of flipped around a little bit. But it's pretty amazing how those guys can just put up those sort of numbers in the single game weeks. And it goes to show when you are holding them, how easy it is to, and how they can just outperform these other guys. I mean, Froling was someone who was really popular. He had a 14 the first game and low 20s in his second game last night. And Bryce Cotton and Davis have almost doubled his score in a single.
Yeah, 2 unbelievable players, right? And it's been my story the whole year. I've not owned either of them. I mean, I think I owned KD in like round 3 for 2 weeks, but aside from that, I haven't been able to jump on them purely because of other areas of my team. But next week's a week. Bryce will be coming in tonight after lockout, and I'm looking forward to hopefully the next 3. I think they have 3, or they've got 3 doubles in the next 4 rounds. Just having one guard hopefully pop off really, really nicely for me. But I was watching Perth the other day, and you think you got Windler coming off a really big game, you got Pinder playing really well off the bench at the moment, Doolittle's still out, but geez, they just rely on Bryce so much, and he still does a ton of a lot, and he still plays 38 minutes, so he's a no-brainer if you haven't got him next week. So, are you any chance of getting KD back out of interest?
Yeah, I think I will, and I always had the avenue to. I've got a couple 100,000 in the bank. I think the killer for me is going to be that I didn't trade Keandre Cook. And look, I've seen a few rumblings on social media and stuff, and not towards me, but towards other people. I felt bad for them, where people have sort of said, oh, he was a must trade anyway with the break even and stuff. Like, nobody with a double game week is a must trade. If you've got a double game week, they're never a must trade. You can always just bank the points and just keep taking the points. And Keandre Cook, despite his recent struggles, has actually been quite good this season. So I was of the belief that he had some decent matchups. Now, he shot terribly in that first game and still scored 20s. I was pretty high on him getting a 30-pluser tonight. Now, obviously, we've got the news that he may sit out, so that's going to be an absolute killer. And that's one of those ones where your luck can really turn around. You got all these people trading Keandre Cook, and if he reverts to the mean, he actually has a really good round, and you bank the double game week points, and it works out great for you as a holder. But he misses a game, and then all of a sudden it absolutely kills you, and everyone's rewarded for selling him. And that is SuperCoach in a nutshell, regardless of what sport we're playing. So it's a tough one. But look, let's talk about the schedule quickly, Boz. We've got 2 weeks in a row now where everybody is actually on a double game week. And what that means is I think that some of our, strategies that we hold near and dear in NBL SuperCoach get thrown out the window, because one of the major things that people need to get their heads around, I think, with this schedule is it's no longer like with Keandre Cook. People, I just said, there's the must-sell guys that said, oh, you have to sell him. But and I've said double game week, you can't. The double game week holds are now out the window. A lot of the time we would hold guys because they're on a double game week and have to trade the singles, even if we liked, other guys better. We just need those double game weeks. Everyone's on it now. So this is an opportunity, I think, to move hugely. If you've got boosts, it's actually not a bad time to use it, because you can now pick from everybody, knowing that everyone's on a double game week, and make sure that you get the best players into score.
If someone has a boost out there, I'm super impressed with their luck for this season, but also they're kind of just restrained from not blowing one, kind of mid-season. And I think there's a guy on Twitter called NBA from Italy. I don't know if you seen him.
I have
on X before. Yeah, and I think at one stage, I think it was only 3 or 4 rounds ago, he said he hadn't used a boost. So he possibly could be the sole person out there that has a boost left, maybe. I don't know what he's done since.
Is he ranked 20K or something?
He might be. Hard. I'm surprised they even let you play SuperCoach from Italy. He could be the one person that is in the position like that and can literally get in 3 really, really good scorers for the next 2 weeks, because everyone's on the double.
It's crazy. I had a boost a couple of weeks ago and I used it, and it ended up being a complete waste. So I wish I had it now, but it is a strategy to look at boosting to get 3 of the best players in, because a lot of teams aren't going to be able to do it, and it's a time that you can trade everybody. It's also an interesting round because if you're looking forward, Boz, Adelaide at the moment has the best immediate draw, because they now start from this week on 4 doubles in a row, which is why I said I'll probably get KD back. It's interesting because you've got them as the only team over the next 4 weeks. And one of the nice things is if you set yourself with Adelaide players now, in 2 weeks' time, when the teams start to drop off their double game weeks the next 2 weeks, you've got those guys sat there and ready to be able to make other moves in your team to maximize your double game weeks. It's going to be really important. So I reckon that Adelaide probably got the best immediate draw. You did mention that Perth have got 3 out of the next 4. There's a couple of teams that do drop off, where in the last 3 rounds they've only got 1 double game week. So it's probably really important for people to start looking ahead as well, because we are in the final month round of the stretch before NBL's over for SuperCoach.
Yeah, so yeah, Adelaide's obviously the main one. I'm just looking now at my Excel document, but yeah, some interesting teams like Illawarra have 2 doubles, whichever other team does. Then they go to 2 singles, but then they finish with the double. So Cairns and Illawarra are the only team that finish in round 20 with the double. So it's going to be really tough. So some people will have a Trey Cal or Froling, maybe a Darius Daves on their bench, and they're probably going to think to themselves after round 17, nah, they're must trades. But, can you get them back in round 20? I'm sure you can. Most people will be able to get those types of players back. But if you can afford to maybe hold a Trey Cal on a couple of singles on your bench for the rest of the season, come that last round, you're then not having to make kind of that move in the last round. You're able to actually make those moves around him. So it'll be really fascinating to see how people attack these last 5 rounds. And I know that there'll be some people that need immediate scores if they're kind of closing in on that top 10, let's say, ranking. They'll want to get points on the board early and just kind of figure it out week by week. Because the nature of this game, so many times you can plan for 5 weeks in a row, but then, if 5 weeks time, I should say, but if you get injuries, then all your plans go out the window. So I find that sometimes it's nice just to literally plan for the week that's coming up and then just worry about what you do next week. So yeah, very interesting times.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the draw now myself as well on my phone. It's with Cairns and Illawarra, the only guys that have the round 20 double. It's you're going to have to hold some of those. It's one of the reasons why I actually brought in Wardenberg early. One, because he was a massive pod and I panicked and wanted to chase, and that didn't work out well at all. But the other thing is as well, like from now until round 20, Cairns only have 1 week where it's not a double, which is very, very appealing. And it's easy to hold Cairns players for round 19 after a double game week, knowing the next week they're back into the double and they're one of only 2 teams. So you're right, people will be able to trade these guys back, but you can only do it with 2. So there's only 2 teams on double game weeks. You can only get 2 of them in. And very likely a lot of good teams are only going to have 2, maybe 3 double game weeks for that last round. And that's going to be huge. It's also going to be huge to hold the guys that can score well. And I think that's the strategy as well on singles, because most of the league's on singles. Look, let's talk about some players, mate. Obviously, this week, let's start with the guns, because everyone's going to have the pick of the whole league in who you think is going to be the best players to score. Average-wise, we've obviously still got Kendrick Davis at number 1. I'm not the only one that traded him out. There was other people that sort of looked at it and used that cash elsewhere for a round while he was on the single. I'm not going to say he's a must get back, but I think he's pretty close. And I certainly think that if teams are looking at getting 2 sort of guns, that they should look at getting 1 gun in Davis and downgrading somewhere, which I think you can score more points with. The only thing that I'll do to look at the other end of the argument, Boz, is when you're having a look at schedule, round 16, I don't think it's the best for Adelaide. They are away at Tasmania, and we know how Tassie go at home and how they grind and slow things up. So that could be a tougher one for Davis. And then they're playing Perth. Sorry, not Perth. Where was the other one? Illawarra, sorry. And Illawarra, we know, the number 1 team for a reason. They've had some hiccups, but I think they've righted the ship, and their defence can be quite good as well, and the guards. So it's not easy matchups for Adelaide this week.
Doesn't look like it, no. And I think we saw last night, if you watched the Illawarra Tassie game, even though Illawarra did end up coming out and winning, Tassie grinded that game down. They still held Illawarra to 89. And I know Illawarra are a team that average over 100 or thereabouts a game. And to be honest, going into the last quarter, I think Illawarra are on something like 64 or something. So, yeah, Tassie could make it a really, really tough kind of game for Adelaide. But in saying that, I just think KD's just too good. I just think he gets what he gets every week. Whether they end up losing by 30, whether they keep it a close game and just lose, whether they pinch out a win, he just does. It's not dictated by, I think, if they win or lose. I think every game KD gets his. So, in my opinion, yeah, if you don't have him and you're up in that kind of top, maybe 1%, even 5%, I'd be getting him straight back in just to kind of counterbalance, because you would not want to lose ranking because KD goes off and gets 100 in a double game week again, which is very, very likely.
Yeah, I think he's matchup proof to the point he's not going to score badly. You're not going to get 20s out of KD. So he's not going to have a 50-game week. I think that the risk and the gamble is, I'm pretty sure that after lockout, he's going to have over 100 break even. And the risk and gamble is going to be, look, if you want to risk it, because there is so many other guard options, obviously, you could hope that he gets a 65. And it sounds silly. Going 65 is a bad score for a round, but you could hope that he gets a 65 and it's 230s that he puts up. And then all of a sudden he's going to drop, he might drop 50K. And then he's got an easier matchup next week and it might be easier for teams to trade him in. So, I mean, like, if you can't get him in, it's not the end of the world. Or if you're a gambling man, you could gamble that you can get someone to score the same as him. But I do agree with you that any given week, though, he can still go 100. And it's a very scary proposition. Some of the other guys as well, when we're looking at Adelaide, we mentioned they got the best draw because they've got the next 4 in a row of doubles. The other guys, obviously, Montrezl Harrell. Now, Trez scored a 48 in a single, and he looked pretty fired up. He is now 366,000, but that figure is going to go up because he's beaten his break even. So he's going to be a little bit more, 375, 380-ish, and he's still going to look like a pretty good trade in now with that draw. So he's the other one to look at. He doesn't have the ceiling of a KD, I would say. And he also, as the 6th best averaging player, has been very good, but he has had games in the 20s. So where are you on Harrell, mate? Because it's obviously the forward and the centre spots are very tough to fill with guys, and he's got the 4 doubles in a row. So I can see him being very popular this week for a reason.
Yeah, he'll be very, very popular. I think with Montrez, you're right. Emotions can get the better of him at times. But most of the time, he actually uses that kind of emotion during his games for the better, and he ends up kind of putting up big numbers. And, yeah, he's back to his best in their last game. I think the only thing you got to weigh up is everyone will have Cooks, and that's the definite play on the field. And then, yeah, after, I guess, Frolling's last 2 games, you'd be pretty ballsy to kind of, lock him in. Even a Tyrell Harrison, I think people will be confident to leave him at centre. So that's that second forward spot. And to be honest, on a double game week when everyone's playing, it's Trez or Jack White for me. And in saying that, Jack White scares me because Melbourne have been in an absolute slump. They've gone off on the road, and not just him, but they're all playing terrible. They've lost, I think, 4-ish out of the last 5, or they've maybe lost 5 in a row, something like that. So Jack White's 60K cheaper, and will probably be about 80K cheaper when Trez goes up in price. So I guess if you can afford Trez, why not? Because the schedule 4 in a row. But in saying that, Melbourne have 3 doubles in a row now, so Jack White could be a bit of a cheaper option, and we can see what he does when he's playing well. He puts up those 75 to 80 scores in a double. So I think for me, personally, I'll be getting Cotton in, and then with whatever remaining money, if I can get Trez, I'll probably get him just for the safety of the 4 games. But if I need to save money, I think Jack White will be someone I'll look to target. What about yourself, Barnesy? You reckon Trez or Jack White are good options?
Yeah, I think that they both are. I think Trez is more of a long-term one. If you're getting him in right now. But I think you can afford to wait, and I'm not going to get Trez in. I like your Jack White call. I'm highly, highly concerned because I think United look really poor at the moment. And I think that White does. I don't think he's been anywhere near assertive enough. And I think that he's been frustrated, and you can see that. And his scoring's been awful. So it's one of those interesting ones where he's going to be maybe even 280,000, which is starting price just about. It's crazy, the drop-off, because he's been in the mid-400s in price. And he was a must-have at that mid-200 range to start the season. So there's 2 ways of thinking on it, I guess, Boz. He's got to pick it back up because we've seen how good he is. We know how good he is. And that's a value purchase. And it's so great to be able to save 100K on getting a White instead of a Harrell when Harrell might actually be outscored by him. The opposite side is United look really poor. They're going to continue on a slide perhaps, and White's going to struggle. And unfortunately, that could happen. So I think it's a really hard one. But I'm going to throw something to you that I'm going to put as my hot take for this podcast. If you want to gamble, go Sydney instead of Adelaide. And I'm going to say why. I'm going to say Cooks is going to outscore Harrell this round at slightly less ownership. And I'm going to say that Adams is going to outscore Davis at significantly less ownership. And I'm going to base it all around the draw because Sydney are at home for both games. The first one's against United. United are struggling. Love watching a game that's tomorrow. Love watching a game on a Thursday night, first game of the round with a lot of meat in there. And Also, Cairns at Kudos Bank in Sydney this round. When you're
I've just
looking at
seen that.
captains, it is juicy. I know Cairns tried hard last game, mate, and they went really well, and they pushed Illawarra and got the win. But, geez, away from Cairns, I love those matchups. So I think that it could happen. I think that forward guard combo of Cooks and Adams could outscore the popular Adelaide boys.
Jeez, you might be convincing me to get Adams now over Cotton, because I'm looking at Perth and they've got Tassie away. So that could be an interesting matchup for, well, not that Bryce doesn't just get his, but if I can save some money and get Adams instead, it's definitely a point to think about. But unfortunately, we haven't got much time to think about it. We've got about 24 hours or 36 hours by the time this goes out till the next game. I think Sydney perform better at home. I think it's statistically proven as well. And again, I really like teams that are kind of on the fringe of that playing spot this time of year. So someone like Brisbane, for example, tonight, Keandre Cook, the game time decision, they're fighting for that 6th spot. Like they're going to try and make him play through pain. You know what I mean? So someone like an Illawarra, they can afford to rest someone. But some teams like Sydney, Tassie, not that Tassie are very good for SuperCoach at the moment, but Brisbane, they're teams you want to target some good players on, because they will want to roll their starters out for as long as they can and get these wins because they need them. I guess Adelaide probably is in the same spot. Adelaide, I'm sure, are trying to fight for that 6th spot as well.
They need the wins too, yeah.
Yeah.
They're already running Trez and Davis into the ground anyway. So I don't think they'll even be able to play basketball next year because they'll be done. Too many minutes in those legs. Sydney as well. I'm just going to throw it out there. They want to be top 2 and they're 3rd at the moment. But the other thing with them as well, Adams came into last round with his prior 6 games. He'd averaged 53 points a game. That was actually 5 points better. And this is before the current round. So Adams has been on fire. He's been averaging 50s. He actually only had 1 game not in the 50s in that 6-game sample. And he's got 2 that are 60 pluses. So when you're talking single game weeks and he's putting up those numbers, he's in form. And Xavier Cooks as well had a really poor game in the first one, and he still managed a 78-point round. And he's one of the top players. He's the best forward center. He's the best forward that you can have. So I think that it's a real pod play to go against the Adelaide boys this week if you can. And I don't think Adelaide will score poorly, mate. I just think that other guys might be able to score better. But the thing that I'm scared about, if I were to go with that strategy, is the following week. Geez, you'd want to be able to get Adelaide in. Yeah,
absolutely. And just one more thing on Sydney. It might have been lost in the news while people are obviously on holidays, but they've signed an import point guard. So I don't think maybe this week he'll play. He has to play. So essentially he has to play to qualify to play in the playoffs. But I dare say they will kind of just peter him in off the bench, give him 10, 15 minutes a game. I'm not really sure. I haven't really looked him up. I don't really know where he's been, what he's done. So I don't think that'd be an issue for those at home maybe thinking, will that affect Adams, getting Adams? I don't think it will. I think it's still Adams' team. Cook's second in charge. And then I guess I think his name's Levante something. I can't really remember. He might end up being their 3rd, 4th option near a space cam.
Yeah, I think that one of the things, he hasn't played a huge amount of basketball. And people were sort of looking around, he only averaged under 2 assists a game last year, but he didn't play a lot of games. And a couple of years before that, he was averaging around 5.5 to 6 assists for a few years. So I think he's going to be that sort of distributor. And I think that I wouldn't be surprised if they played him 8 minutes just to ensure that he's, played minutes to qualify. And one of the reasons, like if we were talking about these Sydney guys 2 months ago, I had a lot more red flags about doing these trades. One of the things that I really like about Sydney in the last few games is that they've looked significantly better. Brian Goorjian has done things that, trying to say this nicely, that a rookie coach would have done in the first month, to be honest, and that is figure out what their rotations are and stick to it to get some repetition. Gorge, with all his experiences, decided to take 3/4 of a season to get there, but he did get there. And they basically have a mainly 8-man rotation the last few games, and that's really helped. No funky stuff like Adams coming off the bench and all this other stuff, or playing Robertson, and not just any minutes, but playing him like 15 minutes a game and starting a Sean Bruce and all this stuff. It seems to be out the window, and I really like that. And that's one of the reasons why I sort of am fairly confident with the Sydney purchases right now. It's the form, but also I think that they are definitely playing better, at least offensively. The defense is still left wanting at times for periods, but offensively, I think they look really good. We should talk about some other teams, Boz, because people will get upset. There's a couple of other guys in this league that are pretty good, and one of them is Bryce Cotton. Now, I think that the ultimate this week is to go, look, I've got a starting backcourt of Kendrick Davis and Bryce Cotton, but Bryce is 491,000. He is going to drop slightly, I think. So
going
to maybe drop to 480, but it's still going to be expensive. So if teams already have Davis, should they be looking at going, just one gun in and one downgrade to get a Cotton? Or do you think it's better, to leave Cotton because not many are going to be able to get him in anyway?
That is very dependent, I think, on where you rank. I think Cotton, if you're ranked high, you're close to the number one, he would be not a pod move because I'm sure there'll be some people around and that own Cotton, but he'd be a move that you would do. Just bite the bullet. Yes, you downgrade, maybe getting like a Mitch McCarron who will be like 110K, but he's pretty much playing point guard for the rest of the season. I don't think my man PJC is ever going to return. But yeah, Bryce Cotton's a massive get this week. I'm going to get him in, not as a pod. I just want to get somebody in that's going to put up a 80 kind of score baseline. I just don't think you should be tricky. I don't think you should try to kind of ignore Bryce and go somewhere else. So, for me, it's getting Bryce in to make up for a lack of KD and then just hope that a Trey Carl or Derek Walton Jr., whoever I choose to kind of start with him, can somewhat get close to KD. But yeah, don't play funny buggers. Just get Bryce in if you don't have him. Yeah,
it's a tougher first game away at Tassie, which you mentioned, but they also do have the Bullets the second game, albeit away. I think that they can definitely put points on Brisbane. So other star players for this round, one of the things that I sort of noticed when looking at the games this week, and I think this is a really important strategy when you're looking at trading in your guns, like look at the draw this week and next week because everyone's on the doubles. Like it's fine to say, this guy averages 5 more points in the season, but who's going to average more the next 2 weeks? And Sem this week have a pretty good draw. They're at home versus the Bullets, and they've also been playing a lot better lately. And then they're away versus Cairns. So, aside from maybe hitting New Zealand at the moment when they're a bit down in the dumps, that's probably about as good a draw as you can get. And I really, really like Sem. Like, if you've got a Walton, it's going to be hard to have him on the bench, which a lot of teams are going to need to do. He might even be a pod start over someone more popular. And it's also a matter of, look, I'm someone who's very up and down on hurt. So interested in your opinion, Boz, because I might get hurt in this week. And I just get frustrated that he seems to put up a really good game and he also looks quite good. And I love his play. And then I look at it and it's like 31 SuperCoach points. And it's so vanilla. And you just don't get those 45-point games and stuff. And I find it really annoying. At 350,000 as a center or a forward, he's quite expensive. He scored 63 this round, which was solid. But again, just that solid, not like a Xavier Cook 78 or, when these 100-point rounds that are massive, just a solid one. But he does have a really good draw. And we saw Cairns do quite well against the Illawarra, but their front line, they've got no one there. I could see Hurt just going nuts against them. So I'm a bit torn. How do you feel about Hurt this week for those that don't own him? Because he's only actually in 13.5% of teams overall.
I like Matt Hurt. He's a good player. Great, as we always say, the weirdest shooting style you'll ever see, but obviously it works for him. And I'm just getting his stats up while I talk a bit of rubbish here. But you're right. Like when I watch him play, you think, if you're not looking at the actual SuperCoach scores, you think, oh yeah, this he's had 20 points. He's probably had about 7 rebounds and he's probably got a couple of assists. So he must be on a 35 to 40, but you're right. He's always at that low end of 30. And whether that's turnovers or maybe the lack of defensive stats. If I look this year at his stats, he doesn't average even 1 block a game. So he actually averages below that. And his assists are low. I think what separates Xavier Cooks from a Matt Hurt is Cooks pretty much facilitates 3 or 4 assists a game, whereas Hurt peters around that 1. So I think that's where you kind of find the differentiation there. And I dare say Xavier Cooks would have more blocks than 0.9 a game. So I just don't think he does much more than just score and rebound. And then saying that if you want that big score, you want him to be hunting a double-double. And that has not happened over the last few games, I don't think. Now, Geordie Hunter's been playing really well at the moment. Fair play to him. He was getting used like 15 minutes a game in the start of the season, but I think Josh King, the new coach, trusts him a lot more now, and he's actually been playing upwards of 22, 23 minutes. So that's another 5 minutes that Hurt usually would be on the court with, let's say, like a Vodanovic or, not that Majok plays, but pretty much anyone other than Geordie Hunter, where he gets the feast on the board. So I think that's kind of hurt Matt Hurt, no pun intended. So, look, I think the fact that you've got a Trez and a Jack White who you know can punch those ceiling scores out, it'd be tough. You'd be really gutsy to go Matt Hurt as a pod because, you know, with that schedule, he could actually deliver an 80. But do you know what his highest score on a double is this year? I've never owned him in SuperCoach, so I'm not really sure what like his highest double.
I've owned him. Yeah, look, I've owned him, and he doesn't have like it's all pretty similar. So, like, he's got a lot of 65s, and that's pretty much it. Like, even like round 2, when he was on fire, he did a 66 double, and one of those games was a 40-point game. He's actually only gone 40 plus in 3 games this season. So he just doesn't get to 40 plus, which means that all of his highest doubles are still pretty close to all his other doubles in that sort of mid-60s type range. That's the problem. And someone like Trez, you're right, like he does have that upside, as we saw on the weekend with his 48. The other thing with Matt Hurt, which I can tell you as a betting man, his threes have abandoned him, and he's actually stopped taking them. So he's not hitting threes anymore. I think at the start of the season, you could see games where he's hitting 2 or 3 threes, and now he's not hitting any. I don't think he's hit a 3 for these last 3 games in a row. And I think he's only taken like 4. So that's another thing. It's a real hard one, though, because I do think that his draw is good. So he has done 40s before. Could he go at 40 and a 35 this week? I think he definitely could. If he was a bit cheaper, it might be a bit easier. I think we should go pod hunting a little bit, though. Let's talk about some guys that have been performing that are full-on pods, or some that haven't been performing but are full-on pods. A guy from Sydney again that I sort of looked at and went, wow, I wish that I got him in like 3-4 weeks ago, because the potential was there. He's maybe going to be in the NBA, and he did one of the best dunks on the weekend that I've ever seen in the NBL, and that was Alex Tui. He scored a 65 on a double game week, and people will say, oh, yeah, but, you know, outlier, blah, blah, blah. He's actually been killing it. He's at 289,000. He came into the round with a 60 break even. He's actually going to be in the 290s now. And I think that it is too much to pay for him, except we already spoke about how good Sydney's draw was. And if you want to go full pod, these are his last 3 games. He's gone 21, 39, and 41. Had a poor 17 before that, but then he was still 23 and 39. So in his last 6, he's actually averaging 30s. And he's also playing Sem and Brisbane this week. So he's someone who is a big pod, but he's going to be expensive, and maybe it's not worth the money. I couldn't do it, but I like to give people the options. The other guy that you would have to have South Park Randy size balls to go for at the moment is Cam Oliver. And Oliver is different, right? Oliver's not scoring well, but he came in this round at 242,000 with a 65 break even. What that means is that he could be around 220,000 come lockout for a guy that's a dual forward center and he's starting again. It wasn't a confident starting, mate, because that first game ended up getting benched again, but he still came back on but played lower minutes at 19. But he is still starting, and I thought that he looked pretty aggressive. So, I mean, both these guys have got red flags in Sydney, but both of them are going to be pods, and one of them is going to be value in Cam Oliver. You could downgrade a Froling to a Cam Oliver, pocket about 60+ thousand, use that to get a Davis back or an upgrade somewhere else as well.
Geez, Space Cam's had a very yo-yo year, hasn't he? You know, up and down. And I think that would be the worry for owners. You know, what will Gorgon do next? I know we started him, and we were saying that the minutes have been pretty consistent over the last kind of month in Sydney. But for Space Cam, all it takes is a bit of foul trouble. I've been noticing that in the last couple of Sydney games. He gets himself into positions where he just does stupid fouls, and that forces Gorge to pull him. So I think on the weekend he was destined to probably, score a little bit higher than what he did. Then he picked up like that third foul right at the start of the third quarter. Or I think he might have even picked up his fourth foul towards the end of the third quarter, where then he couldn't actually play much of the fourth quarter. His price is much nicer looking at his price than Tui's. So I wouldn't even think about Tui. Just on Tui, I think people get very import heavy. Like I'm the same. I don't really ever own any of the Aussies. I always find besides Cooks or White, I always find myself kind of trending towards, I want to pick up the imports because they're the star players of the league. But yeah, someone like Tui, I think that might be a reason why he doesn't get owned as high, because he's just he's a next star. He's an Aussie. He just does what he does and no one really takes kind of notice of it. But yeah, Oliver, geez, if you really needed money, sure, but so much better options. If you're telling me I can get a Jack White for 40K or maybe 60K more than Oliver, but it still be under 300K, I'm taking that every day of the week.
Yeah, and I think aside from price, the only other possible value for an Oliver risk if you need a downgrade is if you need a centre, because he can be popped into there. But yeah, it's very risky. Talk about risky. Cairns is risky, but they've probably got the second best draw for the rest of the season. They have a few interesting pods and cheaper guys if you need a downgrade. They play Sydney away, but then they're also playing Sam in Cairns. So, yeah, it could be worse. Sam Mortenberg should be back this week. He's actually in the top 10 best scorers this season on averages, not just positional, but overall. He's averaged almost 29 points a game for the season, and he's 315,000. Now, he's a 14-win combo that's at 6% ownership. So he's obviously a huge option. Tanner Groves is only 2.9% owned at 289,000, though that price is going to go up significantly because he came in with a break-even at 10, and he has gone very well this round. 31 he got with a single game week. But Groves has been a lot better lately as well. A guy that hasn't been good at all, and I'm just going to give you the trio and then get your opinion on it, is Pedro Bradshaw. So he's not a pod because, he's going to give you good pod points. He's a pod because he's been terrible, and accordingly, he's now going to be very cheap. So he is going to be just over $200,000 as a guy that's a dual forward guard. And then the only reason that I've got interested in looking at these sort of guys, Boz, is because, I mentioned, say I want to get Kendrick Davis this week again. I need to downgrade someone. You can free up so much money by going to a Pedro Bradshaw who is starting and getting minutes and who has scored a little bit better of late, and a little bit better for him is getting in the 20s rather than the teens more consistently. But with the double game weeks, that's going to be in the 40s. And I will throw out there that even though he's gone badly, guys in past weeks and past rounds that have been popular, the Pinders, the Frolings, these guys get 40s all the time in double game weeks, and you're sort of happy with 50 from them, and they cost a lot more. So I'm not saying Bradshaw is going to be good, but with the versatility and needing to downgrade if you're in that boat, I'd rather downgrade to him at 200K than maybe one of these other guys that's on a bench for someone for 150, 160 if you've got the money. That's where I see his value. But 3 Cairns pods there and guys that you could hold for the rest of the season, which is valuable as well.
Yeah, I might start just going one by one. I think with Wardenberg, he's shown that he's improved so much, and we had great things to say kind of on our mid-season review podcast. And it just was a bit of a shame that when we both got him in, he kind of cramped up because he hasn't played for a couple of weeks and then fell ill. Or I wouldn't do it this week, but maybe next week I'd be looking to get an extra forward, and I might think about getting Wardenberg in if he plays a full game this week. But he's just probably in the running for most improved. He should be in the running for most improved player. So I'd have no issues with getting him in, but maybe wait a week, because I dare say, because he had an 11 that week where he cramped, I dare say he would have lost a little bit of money or was going to be losing a bit of money. And what's his break even? Do you have that with you, Barnesy?
Yeah, so Ward's break even is at 51. And obviously has a double game week. So, look, I think that he'll probably be around the same price after this round.
Yeah, so I wouldn't think that he jumps too high up where he's ungrabbable. So I think you can wait a week on Wardenberg. Groves has been awesome. In the preseason, I was speaking about how much I loved him and he could be a double-double machine, and he's kind of shown that. And in saying that, he gets fouled out literally every game. So the fact that he could actually be out there for longer to better his score is something. So Groves is the informed player. So when we speak about, Jalen Adams at Sydney saying you jump on the informed player, he's the informed player at Cairns. So someone you can get in a little bit cheaper in your forward or centre stocks. And then lastly, we have Pedro Bradshaw. Geez, that's a tough one. I think he starts, but then I often just see him standing at the back of the bench. Have you noticed that? He doesn't sit down when he goes off. He actually stands like in the dugout with his long arms. He just stands there. And then you think, oh, he'll get caught up into the game. Just keep standing there. There was one game where I don't think he played the second half. He kind of started the third quarter, got pulled after 2 minutes, and then for the rest of the game, you saw him just standing there watching. So I think he's someone that Adam Ford kind of, when he's on, he'll keep on, but when he's off, he'll rather put minutes into Kyron Galloway and develop him a bit more. So yeah, with Cairns, I'm a bit scared to pick any of them, to be honest, because I don't know what Adam Ford wants to do. There were talks about him, having to take ownership now of losing so many games, and then they come out and get the win. The ownership said they're happy for him to see out the season and potentially re-sign him. So maybe does he start thinking about developing? So I think Taron Armstrong will just, not that he's been playing very well, but he will just be getting 35 minutes a game, guaranteed. I also think Wardenberg, because he's still really young. He's only 21, 22. They have to play him. Tanner Groves, I guess he's been playing well, and he seems like a bit of a glue guy for their group. He seems really the connector, so I think he'll play. But then,
they need a centre. They don't really have any centres.
And sure, they need exactly right, position-wise. And then, guys like Rob Edwards, Pedro Bradshaw, do we start to see them getting shut down a bit? Because they're not pushing for a playoff spot, and what's the point? Why wouldn't you want to get minutes into these other younger guys you have on your bench, like a Higgins, Titcher, and things like that? So, yeah, I'd be hesitant to do Bradshaw. But Groves and Wardenberg, I'd be okay doing.
Yeah, and I mean the reason I didn't bring up Armstrong too, he could have a good season, but he's a guard only, and you just can't consider guards. So and Cairns could go terrible as well, and that's the other problem with the Wards and the other stars like him that are putting up good SuperCoach points still. It might regress a little bit, but you're going to need these guys at the end, so it's a real hard juggle. Somebody else who's been going poorly, especially by his standards, that is a pod, but also almost a downgrade option now, funnily enough. First time this guy has not scored a field goal in the NBL despite playing for multiple years, and that is Milton Doyle. He did not score a field goal last game, got 10 rebounds and 7 assists, so still put up points. He had a 43-point round in what was a double game week for him, and conveniently enough, that was his break even as well. So he is just under 250,000. At guard, that's pretty cheap. I think the problem is who are you downgrading to him, and the fact is that he's gotten really poor scoring so far by his standards again. I'm just gonna, before I go to you with Doyle, make sure that I'm making the viewers very well aware. I'm not saying guys like Bradshaw and Doyle are good plays. Some teams need to look for guys that aren't going to cost some money so they can get someone great in another position. And I always think you're better off getting guys that are fallen guns or fallen stars than a young guy you don't know what's going to happen with, or a bench guy or a guy that could get benched. Doyle's role is there. He's sub 250,000. He could still go on a decent run. I don't know what to make of it, but one of the things that I looked at, is, geez, if this was last week and I had the trades to do it, I would have rather gone a Keandre Cook down to a Doyle, because that would have got me 85K. After Keandre Cook's drop that's going to come, it's not going to be enough money, and that's the problem. So, but Doyle, does he bounce back?
Well, he's a proven star of the league. You'd like to think that, that he's only going through a slump. But I think we've had this conversation maybe 2 or 3 times this season where it's that yo-yo where it's not that he doesn't even score field goals. Some games, as we say, he doesn't even want to shoot. I think he was quite aggressive last night. I was watching that game. He did put the shots up. They just weren't falling. So you back your stars in. And I think the fact that he's still got the 10 rebounds, the 7 assists, he's active. The team needs to win to hold on to that hope of making the playoffs. So, yeah, Milton Doyle, I'd be safe and happy to hope bounces back. But in saying that, you're right. Who are you actually downgrading for him? Number one. And number two, is that enough money to get you up to whatever you need to get? Where there are players like Wieskamp, who's finally, it's taken him 15 rounds, but he's actually now found a nice role at SEM where they're going to play him 20 minutes. He's putting up great numbers. I think he scored a 60 over the double. and he's probably only going to be about 160K after this round. If you got him last week where he was in the double digit kind of K, the 90K range, you're laughing. But I think those that got him in this week at 120K are reaping the rewards. But again, would you rather just get a Weeze camp in and bank an extra 100K on what that would be to Milton Doyle? Again, that's a risk. So, yeah, I guess it's up to the team and how much money they have to save. But I would trust Doyle more than I trust Weeze camp.
Yeah, and I guess that's the thing. I got 3 guys to finish up on that are sub 200K cheapies that you can look at downgrading on. And Weeze Camp's one of them. We'll talk about him in a sec. Tassie do have 2 home games this week as well. They've got a home game versus Adelaide, and then they've got a home game versus Perth. So it's not the worst draw for Tassie for this round. So if you were going to take that sort of punt, I think it could work, but it really depends on who you're downgrading from your guard spot because it's so valuable there. Last guy before we go to those 3 cheapies, New Zealand I wanted to stay away from. I just saw that they were going to be too bad, but they've been reasonably competitive still. Taco Tuesday, we're going to have to go there. He's had a really good round, had a career high in points for the NBL, and he scored 43 points in one game. Did it all. Had the scoring around 30 points for the game or something like that. Had the rebounds, had the double-double, had the blocks. And one of the things that I did say on the Hub's Discord server is I didn't want any New Zealand players, Boz, but I did wonder if with PJC out, they were going to alter the offense a bit and just feed it into Taco because they don't have many options. And that's pretty much what happened. And he was pretty unstoppable. 1.9% ownership, 250,000 as a center. That's cheap. He is going to be more than that because he scored a 43 with a 39 break even, but not much more. So you're talking about downgrading guys like you could jump off a Harrison. You could jump off a Froling if he really upset you last round. And you could make 30 to 50K pretty quickly on that trade if you need it somewhere else. And you may not drop off in points. And you've got a guy who at 1.9% ownership is an uber pod. So he was quite impressive, obviously, with 43 points on the weekend. Do you think that he can not keep up 43, but maybe give us, that 28 to 30 range average for the duration of the year and be a decent trade-in over some of these more fancy guys?
I think he can because I was watching New Zealand play, and if Mooney's not shooting, they're literally lobbing it, throwing it into Taco, and he literally just catches it and dunks it. It's frustrating to watch as a basketball fan. It's not great to watch. But you can see what they're doing. He was brought over there as their attraction to get people to games. I'm pretty sure they broke their attendance record for the season. I guess, school holidays, things like that help over Christmas and that. But, people want to come and watch him. The fans probably seem happy now. They're content with not winning. It's just all about Taco now. Feed him the ball, give him 20 minutes and see what happens. And, yeah, if PJC doesn't return, then their offense is there's a lot to be desired there. When Mooney fouled out, who'd they play? They played who'd they play?
They were that's okay. They played Perth at home.
Perth,
and then they played
yes.
Brisbane. They had Brisbane away.
That Brisbane away tonight. But yeah,
tonight,
Perth. Yeah. When Mooney fouled out, and I think Taco was on the bench, that off. Oh my god, they were just that no one can score.
That's an awful team.
It was shocking. They were just passing around the key. No one was really doing it. Poor Mitch McCarron, you got 2 bung knees. He was the only one offering something. It was really sad to watch. So, yeah, Taco's the second option at the moment of that team. So I don't understand why you wouldn't gamble there at 250K.
Yeah, I think it's a decent one to look at. Center only is a bit annoying, but we do have 3 guys who are sub 200K to consider. We'll go to Weezekep first because you mentioned him. Had a phenomenal round. It was ridiculous. He ended up scoring, 56 points at 2.1% ownership. I didn't love the trade-in. I could see it working, but I thought it was a bit of a risk because he is shown to be so poor in so many other games. And you look at the minutes, and you can see similar minutes in other games this year for Sam, and he's just not been any good. But then he threw around, I think, 3 blocks into his line on the weekend, which really put that game right up there, and he was hitting the 3 really well. So all of a sudden, as a forward guard combo duel, he becomes interesting. 128,000, you mentioned already, a -1 break even. He's going to go up significantly. It might be too much now. I think he might go up towards 170K or something. So it might be a little bit too much because, again, we've seen his form before, but we mentioned at the start of the show, mate, that Sem have actually got a really good draw this week. And maybe Wieskamp just needed some confidence and a draw, and this is going to be it. So he's a definite option. I don't know. It's got the red flags that you'd expect. He's a bench player. He hasn't scored well in similar minutes before, but he is on fire at the moment, and he's going to have another very low break even at a cheap price.
And I think that's where you can get away with having a go because, again, we've harped on this podcast about banking on players that are in form, your Adams, etc., Groves that we spoke about before. So someone like Wieskamp, he fits that criteria. He's in form, and basketballers, when they're in form, it kind of sustains for a little bit. So if his shot's falling and he's seeing that, well, then his confidence is up. The 3 blocks, massive outlier. Could get you 1 block. I don't think he'd get 3 every game. I pretty much would bet that he wouldn't get 3 every game. But yeah, I don't think it's a bad option. They play home games coming up, but they do it out at the State Basketball Centre. So it's not actually at John Cain because that's where the Aussie Open starting on Monday. So look, maybe going out there, they're kind of local rings. I don't know if they're any different. They might make his shot fall a bit nicer. Who knows? But I think if he's still 170K and he's still going to make 40-ish K, I think that's fine. That's a good little downgrade there. But I think there might be someone better in the guard position we may touch on. I definitely have someone I want to touch on, but I'll let us move on, Barnesy, and we'll see if we get there.
Mason Peatling had a career game. He had 3 blocks himself and had a 30-point game yesterday. His first game was 3 points. So these are the swings and roundabouts. I think one of the things with him is that he's a forward and he's 157,000 coming into this round. And with that as well, he had a 24 break even. So he's only going to be about 165. He's going to be similar. He seems to have more of a, he's a starter and Wieskamp isn't. That's the difference. But he's quite up and down. And I'm not sure. One of the things that I was frustrated as a non-Peatling owner on the weekend was he normally gets the rebounds and he's used a lot for that sort of grunt work and stuff. But he hit a 3 on the past round. He got 3 blocks in a game. He ended up with like 3 assists at halftime, and he doesn't get those either. So he was really hitting all the stat categories, and that just doesn't happen. I don't think it will continue, but do you see him as a downgrade option potentially?
Yes, I do. I think at this time of the season, you need to find people. So that's why we're talking about them. And you're right, though. The yo-yo's there. So he'll put up a 3, and then he might put out whatever he had last night in the 30s. It's a tough one with Peatling because I think for one thing in SuperCoach we speak about his role, we need to see clarity. And the clarity's there. He starts. He's been starting for the last 6 rounds. Like, we can't question that Tatum will all of a sudden bench him. What I did notice, though, second half last night, they started Darius Days over him. Not sure why. Sometimes players just have to go to the toilet right before the game starts, or sometimes they have a bit of blood on their shirt. I'm not sure, but I did notice that Darius Days did start this second half. So whether that's something they do moving forward, I'm not sure. But that would be one thing that I would look at and be like, maybe I'll actually pivot and go somewhere else because there are other cheap options.
Well, yeah, I couldn't do Peatling, but we probably just need to mention his game on the weekend because the 9.5% of owners will be very happy that they still got him. So we knew that with Magnay out long term, there's going to be opportunity at Taz, but we couldn't quite work it out. A lot of people jumped on Gak. That has not worked out well at all. 4-point round in a double game week, terrible. But the 2 top scorers for Tassie, if there was betting markets on this, you could have made $1 million off $10. Majuk Dang, 54 points for the round, 4.4% ownership. Fabian Krislovic, 48 points at 3.1% ownership. Both forward only. Deng is 228,000, and he's going to be more expensive now. So I can't look at him, particularly because he barely played any minutes in the first half and did all his damage, I think, in the third quarter. But Krislovic is interesting. He started on the weekend. He had a 23 break even, so he's going to be more expensive, but it's still only going to be about 145-ish thousand, if I were to guess. And 145-ish thousand, he's one of the cheapest guys that you can get if he's still going to be starting on a double. And I thought that he looked really good. They needed that bigger body, and he did a bit of everything. And I thought that they were really helped to be competitive by him, because obviously on the last game, their stars in Crawford and Doyle only had 3 points at half time. They need these other role players to step up, and that is the Tassie blueprint. So he is the guy that hasn't shown form, but has just gotten a great role and a great game in. Maybe he keeps that because, Magnay is gone fairly long term. When you're looking before this round, though, 12 points, 8 points, 22 points, 3 points, all in minutes in the teens, and some of them low teens. He's done nothing all year, so this is the classic throw at the dartboard, hope for the best. But on form and on last game, I'd really think that Roth would just continue starting him, and he might actually be really good value at that price.
Yeah, the data shows, I think when Magnay's out, he does more. Not that it's crazy more, but yeah, had a really good game last night. Doubled, got a few blocks. He can shoot from the outside, so that helps kind of stretch the floor. And if Roth wants to win games, I guess he needs to start. The only thing that it's interesting to me is it's kind of like between him and Majuk Deng, whoever's kind of on will get the more minutes that game. They rarely play the four at the same time. So, look, I guess if you again need someone in that kind of 140, 150K mark to save some cash to go up to someone, an Uber premium, then sure. I mean, get Krislovic in and just hope for the best and hope that Magnay doesn't return. I don't even know does anyone know how much longer Magnay's out for?
He might be another month even, because it was 4 to 6 weeks initially, and obviously he's missed a couple of weeks now already. So he might not even return until the final week of the season. So, I mean, it's interesting because Takarangi, we thought a week before might have been a go as well, and he had a really good game, whereas he only played 16 minutes last game now and didn't go anywhere near as well. Krislovic played 24 and basically was in the middle for him. So, 24 minutes is a season high, 10 rebounds, 6 assists, and 11 points. I think that there is worse risks that you could take. It might go pear-shaped, but if it goes well, you've got a $250,000 player at 100K less. And that's going to be really handy on the double game weeks. You had a guard to finish up on, mate. Why don't you unveil your secret weapon for us?
Well, he has one more game to go this round. So he's from New Zealand, if you haven't figured it out already, guys. But it's Mitch McCarron. So I got him in last week. Saw he had a 26 last week in the first game that PJC missed. Didn't get him in that week because he was on the single. Thought I need to get some money generation because I want to get Cotton in the following week. So got him in at 82K and he had a 23 in his first game. Does a bit of everything. He'll give you like a 6-4 kind of stat line, maybe a steal in there as well. And he's pretty good for the rest of the season. If PJC actually doesn't return and play, he definitely has next week's double to himself. So if you need someone really, really cheap to save some money, Mitch McCarron, I think, is a really solid option. And he has done it in the past. So maybe not this season, but he's definitely done it in his Adelaide and Melbourne days when he was playing there. So just a sneaky one for you.
And I guess the only downside with him is he's going to be guard, but you're going to want to sell him after a week or two anyway. So, maybe he's in your plans just for a quick plug and play, free up cash, and then you can get rid of him and punt him even after a round. So that can work out as well. Look, we've got to talk captains. Everyone's on a double this week, so it's going to be interesting. I think we're going to have a wide array of captain choices. Who is your top three?
Top three, I'm going to go number one, Jalen Adams. Okay, based on his form, based on the schedule that you were speaking about before, Barnesy, he is someone that you can't kind of, miss, but also very potty. So that's why he's my number one, because if you have him, you're going to be able to really reap the benefits there. I think number two, am I going to stay all guards? I think I have to just do KD and Cotton, 2 and 3, based on form. They're just freaks. They do everything for their team. So any one of those three, I think you'll be in the plus, in the 70 plus range. I guess Cooks. Again, with the schedule, you're saying like Cooks is someone that will, most likely give you a 70 minimum or maybe 60, 65 minimum. But But yeah, that'd be my 3 plus an extra one. So I guess Adam's the pod there. What about yourself?
Oh, I'm going to be really vanilla and agree with you. I think those 3 guards, they're the picks. And I am really interested to look at the Adams percentages. Not that we'll get much info on it before the tip-off, but I'm really interested because I think Adams could be a real good pod play. I did initially think about Cotton as a pod play, but Adams has that draw. Davis could outscore all of them very easily, though. So it's going to be tough, and it's going to be really good because everyone's going to have the captaincy percentages are going to be all over the place. Cooks is obviously the safe one, but a little bit scary as well. I will say, though, with Cooks, that front line of Melbourne is quite weak at the moment. They've got White there, but then who are they? They've started Lee lately. They're benched low, and between those 2 guys, they don't have a lot in the middle. And then as well, he's got Cairns, who he will absolutely destroy. So, that's really good for Cooks as well. I'll throw a pod out there, though. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Walton Jr. go off. He's at home versus Brisbane first up. They can give up some points to some guards. And then he could put up a 48-50 against Cairns the next game. And nobody's going to captain Walton Jr. It's going to be hard for teams to even start him. So that'd be the ultimate big balls pod play. But yeah, otherwise pretty vanilla, mate. We're a bit boring, aren't we?
Yeah, well, actually, it's probably good to be boring. I feel like every time you try to pick a crazy pod, it obviously backfires. So yeah, they're the obvious 5 there.
Just looking now to the community results, because the SC Hub is an awesome community. And look, if you're watching and you're not a part of it, go and join up. The Discord server is great. If you're even only casual NBL, join up anyway, because there's obviously AFL and NRL coming. We've got BBL going at the moment as well. It's got everything covered. So jump on there. But for this past round, and past round's going to be round 14 because we don't have round 15 results yet, and we didn't do a show. We've got 7 in the top 100. And that includes Kane Anderson at 58, which is great work. The top scores for the last round too, the Wendells, Michael, 537, and the Meatheads, Mitchell, 536. And it's just great overall how many people we've got in the top 100 and competing that are part of the SC Hub. And all those guys are part of the community. They're giving advice and chatting away on Discord as well. So jump into the SC Hub, join up the Discord, follow, and subscribe to all the shows as well, like this one. They've also got the second best seeded league for the 10-team leagues as well, and 2 in the top 10 for the seeded leagues. So I'm amazed at the numbers every single week that I have a look at it. But otherwise, that is the round. Boz, thanks for jumping on. Good luck with the final game of the round tonight. I don't know how much skin in the game you got, but hopefully it's good.
Thanks, Barnesy. I've actually got a bit of skin. I've got a couple of bench players in McCarran and the almighty Jonah Bolden, who will be pissing off from my team after this round. And then, Harrison on the field. So enough for me to watch tonight. What about yourself, Barnesy? Anyone in the game?
Prather and Cook starting. Yes, I started Keandre Cook as a pod move. And Harrison on the bench, and future Basketball Hall of Famer Darling for New Zealand. So let's hope that Darling hits a few threes and gets some garbage time minutes. So I got a bit there, and I don't have Davis, so I'm hoping that I'll be watching tonight and probably drinking 1,000 beers in stress. But enjoy the next round, Boz. Thanks for jumping on, mate. And everyone else, enjoy your round. Good luck with your trades and stuff. Don't forget the quick turnaround so you can set your team early. And the Hub will be back in a week's time to review the coming round. Thanks very much for watching and following.
See you later.